The American Legion was founded in 1919 with the goal of helping veterans and service members. Now the organization is addressing critical issues like veteran suicide and the lack of housing on military bases. Northern News Now's Mitchell Zimmerman talked with the national commander of the American Legion during his visit to Duluth yesterday, and he joins us now live in studio with more on that. Good morning, Mitchell.
Good morning, Paul. Vincent Troyola is the national commander of the American Legion and has a goal to visit every single state in the Union to advocate on behalf of veterans and their families. One of the many issues that Troyola wanted to address is the alarming increase in veterans taking their own lives. According to the Department of Veterans Affairs, the average number of veteran suicides per day rose from 81 in 2000 to 121 in 2020. But Congress recently took action to address this problem. Troyola advocated for the PACT Act, which was passed last year, to improve health care coverage for veterans who were exposed to toxic substances during their military service. He says that it's a good start to helping thousands of veterans across the country.
But what we're trying to do is not to concentrate on those numbers. Unfortunately, they're gone. We can't do anything. If we can find the ones that are still here, that's how we're going to have a positive impact and get this thing taken care of.
Troyola says they also created a new program called Battle Buddies, where veterans experiencing mental health challenges are paired with a fellow veteran who will guide them to get them the help that they need. And now Troyola and the Legion are working on a number of issues, including updated uniforms for those service members coming out of basic training. But right now, he says veterans have submitted over 1 million claims using the PACT Act to get help.
I know that you mentioned the national commander is trying to work on a lot of issues for veterans, including housing. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, that's right, Paul. So as we mentioned, that Troyola says there's a lot of issues that they're dealing with, and a lack of on-base housing for several service members is one of them, and their families. Now, this forces them to move further away from the base, which he says is a national security issue because the further that you live from the base, the longer it takes to respond to an emergency.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks for that update. We appreciate that, Mitchell.